Hey, what is up, everybody? It's me, the book and movie guy, and I am finally releasing my long-awaited 10K subscriber Q&A. If you're watching this in the future, you probably maybe didn't wait at all. But if you're watching this as I upload my videos, you've had to wait a couple weeks. I'm sorry about that. But here I am. So let's not dilly-daddle. Let's get right into it, and I'll do my best to give good answers. And if I don't, I'm sorry. All right, we're going to start off with an easy one here. Somebody asked, what are some of the skills or techniques you learned for your movies? Which ones did you enjoy the most? I have a whole video about this that you can check out right here if you are interested, what I've learned from 10 years of making movies. One of the interpersonal skills I learned is just to trust other people and recognize when their judgment might be better than yours. But also, like, sometimes you got to put your foot down about something that's really important to you and that you care about and want to come through. As for actual, like, filmmaking skills or techniques, I'm a big fan of the cold open. That's something that I spammed a lot when I was younger because it's a good way of getting your audience invested. And also, if you have a cold open, particularly one that is also the end of your movie, you have an automatic end goal. So I think it's sometimes smart to know, actually, it's always smart to know exactly what the ending of your movie is going to be, whether it's like the actual story ending or a specific line you want an actor to say or just a visual or a location. Have that in mind so that way when you're writing your script, everything leads up to that moment. Also, when you're writing a script, especially like on a low budget, think about locations that you could actually film in. I really recommend that as well. What are your top 10 pieces of media? Also, 10 adjectives that describe you best. And what is the best trait a person can have? This person asked 3 questions. All good. Top 10 pieces of media? I mean, impossible. Impossible. It's hard enough for me to decide what my favorite movie is. So I'll give some examples of things I like across different media types. When it comes to video games, I think I've mentioned before that my favorite video game of all time is Red Dead Redemption 2. Masterpiece, some clunky mechanics, especially with the weapon wheel and the combat, and sometimes my horse just runs off a cliff without me wanting it to, but story-wise, the graphics for the time, and the atmosphere, the themes, the way it's structured, the characters, everything. I love Red Dead Redemption 2. My second favorite game is probably The Last of Us Part 2, and I'm also a huge fan of God of War Ragnarok. My favorite song is probably Stand By Me by Ben E. King. It has been for a long time. Favorite films, I've mentioned the movie Stand By Me. Titanic is another one that's really important to me. I could go on and on. TV shows, my favorite TV show is The Leftovers. That's probably my favorite piece of television media, but I also love Stranger Things, Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, all the things that you would imagine a person in my demographic to, like. And books, my favorite book is The Stand, but I've got quite a few others that I love. I love Les Mis, really big fan of All the King's Men. So I don't know, there's a lot more, but there's a brief explanation of some of my favorite pieces of media. 10 adjectives that describe me best. Oh boy, are these 10 adjectives that I think other people would say about me, or how I would describe myself, or how I want other people to describe me? I don't know. I think I'm often indecisive. I think that I have a short temper. So, short fused maybe would be the word. I think that I'm often judgmental. I think that I sometimes look too deeply into people and their actions that don't mean anything. So I don't know what the word for that would be. Stupid, maybe. I think that I am curious, but also I can be silly. What is the best trait a person can have? Curiosity or kindness. If you're curious, though, you're likely to be kind, but I think both are very, very important. It's not being smart. It's not about being strong or anything. Being curious and being kind. All right, next person has another group of 3 questions. The first question being, what are your thoughts on the Watchmen adaptation? I think they're talking about the Zack Snyder 2009 movie. I've talked about this before, actually. I like that movie a lot. I think it's a perfect visual adaptation. I know that's not everything. I do think that Zack Snyder loses something of the commentary because he portrays the superheroes as so cool. But I also do think that the film is still off-putting enough in its violence that it can get its point across. Like, for example, when I first watched it when I was like a teenager, the only character I thought was cool at all was Night Owl because the rest were all just so horrible and violent. So it worked with me when I was a child. I don't know what that really says about it, for grown-ups. It is a pretty difficult graphic novel to adapt faithfully. I think that the HBO TV series is a really good sequel adaptation, whatever you want to call it, that captures a lot of the themes and ideas, but of course is not necessarily an accurate plot retelling because it's not trying to be. I have not seen the animated stuff. I also have some of the prequel comics on my shelf and haven't read them yet, though I am sure they're not as good as the original graphic novel. What are your thoughts on Charles Bukowski as a writer? Sorry, I've never read anything about Charles Bukowski. What would you recommend? If you read it, what did you think about The Passenger by Cormac McCarthy? So I actually have The Passenger right here, along with its companion novel, Stella Maris, and they don't like form a cover together, but you can see how they're connected and they're opposites of each other. Shame to say, I have not read either of these. They've been on my shelf for, I don't know, probably like 2 years now. The next Cormac McCarthy book that I read is likely to be No Country for Old Men. I really want to get to these eventually, and when I do, maybe I'll talk about them. What did you think of the book? You tell me. Hopefully it's good. What is one fictional universe you'd want to live in? Show, movie, book, etc. Honestly, probably none of them, because most fictional universes are by definition kind of horrible. But I guess if I had to choose one, it'd probably be, we're going to go basic. Percy Jackson is a good one. It appeals. Everybody wants to be special, especially when you're a kid and you're a loser. And I'll say the one that that gets you canceled. Harry Potter. I think that is one of the most exhilarating children's universes we have. Not to say anything positive about the author, but Harry Potter is a world that has always appealed to me and continues to appeal to me. What is a book or a movie that you think everyone should read or watch? I will beat this horse until it is more than dead. Everybody should read Lord of the Flies and think about how it applies to their own personal responsibility, self-governance, the way they behave in groups, etc. It horrified me the first time I read it as a kid. I still have a deep-seated fear and distrust of crowds because of it. And yeah, Lord of the Flies is my top book that everybody should read, especially if we're just talking fiction. Another movie that everybody should watch, I'd say something, I don't know, simple, like Stand By Me. It's widely accessible, it's got valuable lessons, especially for kids, and it's just beautiful. Yeah. Have you seen Weapons yet? And if you did, how did you feel about it? I'm several weeks late to this, but yes, I did see Weapons. I saw it twice. I loved Weapons. I thought it was amazing. I think that Aunt Gladys is going to become one of our new great classic horror movie villains. It's horrifying, it's scary, it's funny, it's well filmed, it's emotional, and the movie really resonated with me a lot because I'm a teacher. And one of the main characters, Justine, is a teacher. And the scenes when the town is clamoring against her and blaming her for something that's not her fault just really struck home with me. And the way she was portrayed as caring about these kids and not knowing how to communicate it, and everybody thinking that she did something to hurt the kids, and that being the last thing she would do, just it really hit close to home. And I know the director has said there's not a political message and there's different ways you can look at it and whatnot, but to me, that is clearly a movie about school shootings. If you have other interpretations, that's fine. But I watched it and that was immediately what I walked away with. Maybe I'm misreading it, and maybe it's just because I am a teacher, but I was like, yep, that is unequivocally a school shooting movie. And again, maybe it's just because I have to go through fucking lockdown drills 4 times a month at my school, but it hit home. I loved Weapons. I thought it was fantastic. The scariest thing about it is the microbangs. Great performances all around as well. I'm glad that it's getting the love it deserves. Do you have a favorite essay you've ever written, and what was it about or on? Yeah, I have a couple. The ones that nobody ever watches are always my favorites. This video I made about Footloose being the quintessential 80s movie and the overlap between the apocalypse and teenage angst in 80s films is one of my favorite video essays that I've made. I also made this one about Lonesome Dove and Interstellar that nobody watched, and I really liked that one as well because I felt like I did a good job of tying together the shared themes of the Western frontier and the space frontier, and I had some good intertextuality and Matthew McConaughey moments, and I felt like it was edited well, and nobody watched it. So the ones that are smaller and that don't get a lot of love are usually my favorites. Of course, I put something into all of them, but to be honest, even the ones I like, I have a hard time rewatching because I have to watch them so many times when I edit them, and then I watch them always once with my girlfriend, and more time goes by, I see myself and hear the things I say, and I just hate them. So I hate rewatching my videos, but when I think about the concepts, those are 2 of my favorites. And sometimes it's nice just to make a video about something unimportant, like apocalypse and angst in a 1980s movie, or something that I love that nobody talks about, like Lonesome Dove, instead of something that I know everybody's going to be fucking mad at me for. So those are a couple of my favorites. Who's your favorite antagonist? Oh, again, there's so many. Dutch Vanderlyn in Red Dead Redemption 2 is a great protagonist. Call Me Basic, I think Thanos is a good, fantastic protagonist. Killmonger. Honestly, Billy Hargrove in Season 3 of Stranger Things, I think he's fantastic. Lalo in Breaking Bad is another great antagonist. The Judge in Blood Meridian. I mean, again, I'm being a baby here, but Mordred in the Arthurian canon is also a really good villain. And Randall Flagg, the Stephen King character, is one of my favorites. Do your students relate the media they grew up with to the books you teach? Are they references you understand and any would be surprised by? Yeah. I think you're going to be surprised by the fact that there isn't like a cohesive media that my students grow up with. Information and entertainment has become so fractured, largely due to streaming and social media, that it's really rare for there to be like a breakthrough cultural thing that everybody connects with. And you might be saying, that's not true. And obviously it's not a universal statement, but my proof is this. Last year, when I was running my school's yearbook, the kids picked the theme of Netflix for like the yearbook, and they wanted to incorporate a bunch of popular Netflix TV shows and do like polls and have artwork and references. And I was like, guys, you cannot count on other people, especially like students who span 6-7 years of age and their parents, to understand references. And they're like, everybody grew up with insert whatever show, Rugrats, for example, or SpongeBob. And I'd say, okay, let's take a poll. Turn to the whole class. Raise your hand if you've seen whatever show it was at the time. And really only maybe like a quarter at most of the hands in the room would go up. And the kids still weren't believing me. So what I did was I took some of the artwork the kids wanted to use in the yearbook and I put it on the board and I called in random students from another class one at a time. Just blind sample. And I said, what is this? And the results were all over the place. Overwhelmingly, though, they didn't understand the references. And so, like, kids who grew up in the 90s or the early 2000s, which is when I grew up, I was born in 99, so not a 90s kid, but like an early 2000s kid. Like, everybody went home and they watched the same stuff. Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, pretty much. That's not how it goes anymore, particularly because most people don't like even have cable, so kids are watching different things. So they reference stuff, and like I know what it is just because I'm kind of like chronically online, but they don't always know what it is among each other. What they do reference and connect things to are just memes, online culture. I hate to say it, but like TikTok and TikTokers and influencers, those are the new like children's media. Like they remember things like Cocomelon and Among Us in real life, or like Among Us in general. But they don't really have like a fondness for those things. It's more of like a hee cringe. Like there's so many layers of irony with kids that they very rarely earnestly connect to something or remember something fondly. And when they do remember something fondly from their childhood, it's due to a unique experience and not really like a shared cultural thing. Of course, just like every generation of kids, they're really susceptible to like the whims of pop culture, especially on TikTok and whatever's popular at the time, especially memes and slang. But when it comes to media driving culture, that just like doesn't happen. The closest I think I've gotten was in 2023 with Barbie and Oppenheimer. But they do try to relate the books I teach to like memes and things that they know and are aware of our online videos. It's just, it's so scattered that I couldn't tell you, one in particular. They're typically references I understand. The time I'm usually weakest is at the beginning of the year when I've been away from the teenagers for 3 months and don't know what the hit meme is. But short answer is yes, I guess. What makes a book or a movie allowed to be a guilty pleasure? Should there be a moral dilemma? I don't think there should be a moral dilemma, and I don't think I'm the judge to say what should be allowed. If you enjoy it, you enjoy it. The only thing I ever ask of people is to recognize the difference between what you personally just enjoy and what you also recognize as objectively good. Not that there isn't objectively, but, looking at more objective cinematic elements, thinking about the pieces of the movie instead of just how the movie made you feel. The only time I think there should be a moral dilemma is when you're talking about money. Like, yeah, we might enjoy something like the Minecraft movie, and it's going to make a ton of money, which then tells studios we want more of that. So, like, is that all you want? Same with superhero movies. I love them, I enjoy them, but I recognize that that's not all that I want on the market. So the only time you need to worry about morality is when you're putting your money towards something, especially if it's potentially problematic. But I think, if it makes you happy and you recognize it's not very good, I think it's a fine guilty pleasure. I love The Room. Even something like Twilight, I think, fits that category. And, Twilight is not on the same level as The Room, but, like, I enjoy it. However, I don't always enjoy that movie because I necessarily think that it's well made. So if you like it, you like it. All right, I wanted to ask, 1, can you do a leftist analysis on the Dark Tower books? I actually have a bunch of Dark Tower videos. I think I did all the books except for Went Through the Keyhole, The Song of Susanna, and Wolves of La Calla, just because I didn't have a lot to say about them. There's not a lot of political commentary in those videos, but if you want to see my wider thoughts on the books, you can check those out. What I will briefly say here, though, when it comes to a leftist analysis of The Dark Tower, is that the whole story is a metaphor for Stephen King's addiction, which I've talked about, and in that sense, Roland's addiction to the tower. And in both cases, these men only do what they end up doing because they don't have supports provided to them. Now, in Roland's case, the government is completely collapsed because it fell victim to a con man, to a populist cult leader, John Farson. And there's not a lot of detail necessarily about the politics of Gilead when they collapsed, but basically they were lied to. They fell for a charming man and they fell apart, which is what we see in every far-right fascist governmental movement ever. The easiest way, though, to look at the leftist stuff, though, is environmental. Not that the environment should be or is purely leftist, but if we're talking like modern United States politics, environmental readings tend to be more leftist. And also, of course, looking at the character of Susanna or Odetta, whichever version of her you want to talk about, in the second book, and particularly her life in New York and how much her race defines her as a character. I know that's not a full analysis. I would be open to doing a whole video on it in the future. I just have to think about it more. But in the meantime, there's some of my short thoughts. Also, this person said a lot of other nice things in their comment. So thank you. You're the best. What's a movie or book is objectively bad or subpar in some way, but you still enjoy, aka guilty pleasure? I just mentioned The Room and Twilight, I think, are two of the biggest ones for me. What made you want to become a teacher? I don't remember being like a conscious moment or decision, but my earliest thoughts about it were when I was in high school. I think probably like when I was a senior. There's one moment that really comes to mind. We had like independent reading time, and I was rereading, again, the canceled books. I was rereading Harry Potter as a senior, and I was reading The Deathly Hallows, and I remember I don't remember what it was. There was some line between Fred and George about something that they were going to do in the future. And I remember noticing that the line was from Fred, who dies later in the book. And I told my English teacher at the time about it. I was like, hey, I found this cool foreshadowing in The Deathly Hallows. And my English teacher, who taught high school reading, looked at me, and they were like, I've never read or watched Harry Potter. And I was like, what? And this is not to say that, again, like, you're a bad teacher if you haven't read Harry Potter or the things I like or whatever reason, but, like, those were and continue to be, like, the thing that kids read. And I just felt like if you are teaching reading and writing, you should have at least a passing awareness of the things that are popular, especially among kids. And as a boy in school, especially, like, the books that I liked to read, whether they were sci-fi, fantasy, horror, whatever, were never the ones that my teachers liked or even knew about. In fact, I remember another English teacher, we were having a discussion about something like some moral dilemma, and I brought up the previously mentioned Watchmen, and my English teacher was like, what is that? What are you talking about? And I'm like, well, Watchmen, it's like the most famous comic or graphic novel ever. And she was like, if I've never heard of it, and if a lot of people don't know about it, it must not be that good. And I'm just like, what is this fucking weird dismissal of genres that are important and that boys especially like? And not to say, again, that, boys or girls need or should like certain kinds of genres, because they shouldn't, right? You should read and enjoy whatever you want. But the just outright dismissal of these genres really bothered me. And all throughout school, like, I had maybe one English teacher who I really felt like just genuinely loved books and just fucking genuinely loved reading and wanted to share that with kids. And when I was a senior, and I loved reading and writing, and I didn't feel like my teacher did, I was like, what is going on here? There's got to be a better way to do this. And I just remember getting a lot of, like, busy work about memorizing vocab and, like, filling out packets, and everything that I liked about English, I just saw, like, getting kind of sucked out of the subject, especially for my classmates. And I just wanted to do it differently, I guess. And I didn't really probably decide to actually be a teacher until probably my second year of community college. Maybe somewhere in there, I guess, because I started thinking about how much books had meant to me when I was a teenager and a kid, and how important it was that people read and write and just learn also how to enjoy stories. And so I went back to do some things differently from my own teachers. And I don't really like talking about that because it seems like I'm trying to throw shade at my past teachers, and I'm not, because I still talk to most of them and I get along with them, and there's so many things that they taught me that did have an impact. And everybody has different styles and things they prioritize in teaching. There's no time to hit everything. So like, I absolutely don't hold any ill will against any of these people. I respect them. I've learned a ton from them. I still ask them questions. I ask them for advice. Like, I meet with them about things. They're really important to me. But like everybody in every field, I just felt like there was a different way to do it that might connect with kids, with teenagers better, especially boys. And I don't always do a good job of that. You're never going to reach everybody, and I feel bad about that every day, but those are some of the reasons that I was inspired to go back to teaching, and that's what I try to remember in moments when I get frustrated. What is your favorite movie in the Venomverse? This question I find somewhat insulting. It's like having a beloved patchwork quilt made by your extremely talented and creative grandmother. Every piece of the quilt comes together so perfectly to form this beautiful and warm piece with meaning and purpose. And to choose one particular favorite piece of that quilt is like cutting it out and destroying the quilt, because the Venomverse and its 6 films fit together so beautifully and with such precise intentionality that every film is made better by not only the one preceding it, but those succeeding it as well. And they build on each other in this narrative, which is human and evocative and powerful and demure and bold and subtle and just everything you could ever want from a franchise. Each film is so layered and distinct with its own voice, and yet each echoes off the other. Not just like a quilt, but like a symphony. Like perfect harmony, like a finely tuned engine, where every part does something different, but no single part exists without its brothers. For example, the first Venom film is this raw, street-level, almost Dickensian examination of a man. And not just a man, but his parasite. And it asks the question of, what do we do with the poor, with the ill? What's their place in society? Are they parasites, or is the true parasite society itself? And then the second film builds upon those same questions in a clear homage to such classic socio-political and violent films and explorations of society like Natural Born Killers. You see this subtly with the casting of Woody Harrelson. And beyond all of that, the second Venom film asks not only what if there were carnage, but what if we let there be carnage? And outside of the Venom films, this conversation just gets so much more layered and complex. Madam Web, for example, raises the question of, what if there were a Madam Web? And what if someone exploring the Amazon and studying spiders were pregnant, and then they got bit by a special radioactive spider, then gave birth in a cave? What would that look like? No other film has asked what a Madam Web would look like prior to Madam Web, especially in such a neo-feminist noir fashion. It's just truly in a class of its own. And then, of course, we have the primal, almost boots-on-the-ground war film that is Kraven the Hunter. And this film, like its predecessors, asks a deeply important human question. What if a man were craving a hunt? And specifically, who in society is the hunter and who is the hunted? Then, of course, we have Morbius, and I feel there is simply not enough time in all of the world or all of the possible discourse of cinema to explore why Morbius is such an important film, and the influence of Morbius also cannot be overstated. See, for example, Jared Leto's classic appearance in the Hooded Rain Slick. You see the echoes of this in later films, such as the Ice Cube film War of the Worlds, when the hacker clearly is influenced by the style of Morbius. And then finally, we have the finale of the whole franchise, which is Venom The Last Dance. And this film answers all of the questions of its predecessors while also creating new questions, such as, why did I watch 6 of these fucking movies? Next question. Have you read Japanese light novels or classic literature? If so, how many have you read and how much did you enjoy them? I hate to disappoint. Unfortunately, I have read no Japanese light novels or classic literature. The closest I'd say I've gotten are some of the works of Haruki Murakami. And I love Haruki Murakami. I am spectacularly proud of you. Thank you, Jeliza Rose. You're my favorite. What do you think are some of the best uses of music in movies and shows you've watched? I mentioned already the TV show The Leftovers. I think the music in that show is amazing. It's composed by Max Richter, and the music is basically one of the 2 main reasons I watched the show in the first place. The other reason was Giovanni Depo. I saw him in the stand and was like, hell yeah, that guy's awesome. What else is he in? But I knew the music from The Leftovers, and I listened to it when I would write or go on walks or something. And I just think any use of music in that show is amazing. Max Richter also wrote a famous piece called On the Nature of Daylight, and this piece is used at the end of Arrival, one of my other favorite movies, and the scene makes me sob like a baby every time. I think it's one of the best uses of music that we have out there. I think all of James Horner's work on Titanic is also amazing. His work on Braveheart is great. But more recent examples, I think that The Apprentice, starring Sebastian Stan, also has an amazing score that I don't ever really hear talked about. And in particular, there's a scene involving the character who's a real person, Roy Cohn. And there's a piece called Roy's Birthday that just, something about it just unsettles me, and it just gets to me. And I actually listen to it in the gym sometime. But also Ludwig Göransson's score, I probably said his name wrong, but his score for Oppenheimer is incredible, especially the Destroyer of Worlds piece at the end in the montage. I think that's extremely powerful. And also his work on Sinners. I think probably if I had to pick one single scene to just show the power of music, it would probably be that dancing through time sequence in the barn in Sinners. That's just amazing. That also brought me to tears. What is your can't wait to watch list for this year in 2026, books and albums included? The things I'm most excited for 2025 are actually coming up. I'm really excited for The Running Man. I'm also super hyped for Avatar, Fire and Ash. Those are probably my top 3. Maybe stupid picks for movies. Books, I hardly ever read new books. I wish I were better at it, but it's just so hard to stay on top of new book releases. I just can't do it. For movies in 2026, Avengers Doomsday, because I'm just curious to see what that really is going to look like. I think we're supposed to get a new Jordan Peele movie in 2026 as well, so that would probably be up there. As for albums, also hard for me to stay on top of. I'm pretty excited for the new Taylor Swift album. I'm not embarrassed to say. I was also really excited for, one of my favorite musical artists is Halsey. I'm like a teenage girl in 2015, and she did 10-year anniversary version of her first studio album, Badlands. I was really excited for that. Or Ethel Cain has a new album coming out in 26. I think the Mother Cain album or whatever. I'm excited for that. Hell yeah. What do you think of German Marxism and American capitalism preceding fascism in both nations? Oof, this is a really big topic. I don't have time to talk about this really in depth. And I know very little also about German Marxism, unfortunately. But American capitalism preceding fascism, I think makes sense because you get to the point where the government exists to serve business. And naturally, when you increase the rights of businesses, you have to somewhere decrease the rights of actual people, especially workers. So I think that makes sense. And I suppose that you could say kind of the same thing about German Marxism when you get to the fusion of the state and the commerce. Eventually, if you're not doing Marxism right, it stops being about having companies that serve the people and people that serve companies. The same thing as capitalism. I guess that's my short answer. It's a bummer in either case. Good luck developing your economic views. Yeah. You tell me what you think. What do you think? I don't know. You teach me something. Favorite thriller? Looking for a good one so I can read it in the fall season. I think that the book Joyland by Stephen King, I don't know if you'd call it a traditional thriller, but this is really good, and I think it fits fall pretty well. It's set during summery time, but I think it works okay during fall. That's when I read it anyway. If you haven't read the Stieg Larsson Millennium books, Those are really good and interesting thrillers that I would recommend checking out. They're kind of like sad, rainy, wintry, so I think that they would still work for the fall as well. And then also, I have mentioned before, I think I'm a really big fan of the Greg Iles Penn Cage books, especially these three. You could check those out. These are pretty good thrillers too. How can you justify your take on The Last Jedi? Love you, movie man. I'm going to be honest, I don't even know what my take on The Last Jedi is. I haven't seen it in like 6 years. And I remember when I first saw it, I was like, hell yeah. And then I saw it again, and I'm like, fuck no. And then I've thought about it more since, and I'm like, gosh, there's some things I really, really like about that movie in hindsight. And some things that I really don't like in hindsight. So I got to rewatch that someday. How do you feel about TV? I love TV. I watch TV all the time. I probably watch too much TV. I'm actually behind on TV right now. Right now, I'm watching X-Men, the animated series, the one from the 90s. I'll eventually watch the current version. I'm behind on Peacemaker season 2, and I'm also kind of watching Alien Earth. So that's what I think of TV, very briefly. Has there been a book or a film you felt left a big impact on you when you were younger that you cannot go back to now, be it themes or messages it tries to convey that are now understood as harmful, or the overall quality of it being worse than you remember? If so, how did you come to terms with that, if you needed to at all? Yeah, actually, I mentioned it already, but the Percy Jackson books meant a lot to me when I was a kid. And I reread them recently, probably like 2 years ago. And, you know, for kids especially, and teaching Greek mythology and just telling a great fun story, they're fantastic. But they were much less complex than I remembered. Like, they felt very juvenile. I think some of the best children's books don't feel like they're for kids. Those books, to me, really felt like they were for kids. No hate. I know that Percy Jackson has kind of a rabid fan base, but they didn't hold up as much as I expected them to. Now, in contrast to Harry Potter, those books I haven't reread as an adult. I reread them when I was 17, and I felt like they held up. I'd probably feel a little bit differently now. I remember, or, you know, I've gone back and reread passages, and I think to myself that J.K. Rowling's actual writing, like her prose, is not very good. Her storytelling is good, but her prose isn't. And also, let's just address the elephant in the room, which is J.K. Rowling. Looking at Harry Potter, especially politically, as an adult, and comparing it to the actions and behavior of J.K. Rowling is a very hard thing to reconcile. And it's a franchise, the films and the books, that is always going to mean a lot to me. But it's not a franchise that I feel good about supporting as an adult. A, because I don't want to give money to a very rich person who is going to use their money to hurt others. But also, like, just more basically, I think the franchise is so damaged because of Warner Brothers and the stupid Fantastic Beasts films. J.K. Rowling is a fucking horrible screenwriter. She's terrible. She's even worse than Stephen King. And those movies have good elements, but they're awful. If they made another one, I wouldn't go. I didn't see the most recent one because I hated them, and also, again, I don't want to give money to the franchise. And this whole fucking business with the HBO TV show is so stupid and frustrating to me. And even Christopher Columbus mentioned this, that it's confusing because they're just reusing so many elements from the original films that I don't know why it even exists. And it's clearly, well, it exists for money, obviously. But this franchise has also puzzled me because there's like a Marauders prequel sitting right there that they could make, and nobody, including stupid J.K. Rowling, has thought to touch it. So anyways, I get hate all the time for acknowledging the Harry Potter franchise in my videos, and I just like want to get it out of the way that I don't like J.K. Rowling, and I think she's pretty fucking stupid. But at the same time, the sudden revisionist that Harry Potter was like never good is also like stupid to me. But that's a franchise that I definitely view differently as an adult and look at differently than I did when I was a kid, I guess. How did I come to terms with that? I don't know. There's a point where you just got to say, whatever, you know, and kind of let it go, I guess. I don't know. What is your favorite movie soundtrack? I talked about this one a little bit already, but I think that Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman have incredible scores. I think that Interstellar has an amazing score as well. But The Apprentice is one I brought up. Black Panther has a really good score. James Newton Howard actually does some really good work that he doesn't always get appreciated for. Like his music in I Am Legend is one that I listen to a lot. And a movie that is not very good, but which I think has just a beautiful soundtrack is X-Men Origins Wolverine. This music was written by Harry Gregson Williams, and this opening theme, Logan Through Time, just fucking kicks ass. This shit is so cool, and nobody ever talks about it. Honestly, no hate to John Williams, but Alexandre Desplat's work on the Deathly Hallows films, I think, is better than John Williams' music. I mean, John Williams' music is more iconic, but for the two films that the Deathly Hallows are, I think Alexandre Desplat just totally kicked ass with that. I also think that War for the Planet of the Apes has an amazing score. The Batman has an amazing score. If you're asking me about like soundtracks, like diegetic or like radio music, Footloose. I mean, it had I Need a Hero by Bonnie Tyler, made for that movie. Doesn't get much better than that. But you tell me, what's your favorite movie soundtrack? You talked about House of Leaves before. Do you like any other interconnected stories like that, where the way the text is presented is half the story and or enjoyment? I've never read anything even like comparable to House of Leaves when it comes to that kind of text structure, so I don't know if I can give you a really good answer. If you're just talking about maybe something that's like epistolary or plays with form, The Handmaid's Tale does that, and I liked that book, but it's not even close. So if you're looking for a recommendation based off of my answer, The Handmaid's Tale isn't it. So what would you recommend that I check out if I'm looking for something with more out there text features? I've looked at, what's that guy's name? Marcus Zuzak. I've looked at his other series of like 100 books. They're all pink and purple, but apparently those aren't finished, so I haven't read those. I may have missed a mention of either of these in your videos, but did you watch the 2020 version of The Stand yet? I just finished the book last week. Secondly, have you seen the canceled Prime show The Wilds? It had 2 seasons, but is often compared to Yellow Jackets and Lord of the Flies. Thanks. Yeah, I have seen the 2020 version of The Stand. I think I've acknowledged it. I've never talked about it maybe outright. That's such a weird show for me. I mentioned that I watched The Leftovers because of Giovanna Depo, who plays Larry Underwood in The Stand. I think some of the casting in that show is amazing. Like, Giovanna Depo as Larry Underwood was really good. And Greg Kinnear, who plays Glenn, that was also really good. And then you have Ezra Hurd as the Trash Can Man, which is one of the worst castings I've seen in my life. My own bias not liking Ezra Miller aside, this is just like a weird, horrible performance that is also not at all in line with the character as presented in the book. And the entire show is like that. There are moments of that show where I'm like, Josh Boone is a genius. Like, he fucking nailed this. And then other moments where I have absolutely no idea what they were possibly thinking. That is such a weird mixed bag of a show. And it sucks because I was so excited, and like I got to watch the first episode early, and CBS sent me all these like cool pins and posters and stuff, and it turned out to be a huge bummer. Huge letdown, disappointment. I don't know. My dream someday is to make a movie based on The Stand and to cast Harry Styles as Larry Underwood, but he'll probably be too old, and I'm never going to get to make that anyway because, I mean, I'm a high school teacher. So, as for your second question, The Wilds, I have not watched that show. Would you recommend it? Sounds like something I would like. If you recommend it, I'll check it out maybe someday. What is your worst take? Oh, man, I feel like I've expressed my worst take before, and it's that I am an unapologetic Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice defender, like, to my last day. I'm not saying it's a perfect movie, but I am going to say it's a misunderstood movie, and I know that's, like, the least popular thing that you could possibly say. Like, even remotely being a Zack Snyder fan is, like, a death sentence online, and I understand why, because, like, the Snyder fans are pretty cringe, but I like that movie. I think there's a lot of bad, weird stuff in it, and I think that it killed an entire franchise, kind of. But just taken by itself at face value, there's so much cool stuff here. And I think Ben Affleck is my favorite live-action Batman. I said it, and I'm not sorry. There, that's my worst take. Recommendations to start the reading of an uninterested 10-year-old may like horror. I have a hard time with questions like these without knowing the kid. I have absolutely no clue. The most important thing is you want to give them something that they're going to understand and probably something that they can connect to in some way, but understanding is key. Most kids get turned off of reading because they don't understand the text. You need to find a text which has content, which is intellectually at their level and that they find engaging, but also is at a reading level that they find engaging. And typically kids stop reading because these two things start to move apart, or because like a book is easy to understand, but the content is way beneath them. This is a big deal, especially with teenagers who are not reading at the level they should be. They like books that are intellectually stimulating or about topics that connect to, like, say sex, drugs, arguing with your parents, whatever. But the books written at the level that they're reading at don't have that emotional level of content. So it's really hard for me to say. I would just say you probably know this kid. Maybe it's your kid, a sibling, whatever. Find out what the kid likes and is interested in. If you think they might like horror, I would give them something like Goosebumps. That's for younger grades, but if they're not really into reading, that's a really easy place to start, and it's really easy to work your way up, which I also think is important. So not probably the best answer you're looking for, but that's what I would tell you. Find something that the kid likes or connects to, and also that you personally like, so you can connect with the kid over that. That's really important as well. If you don't like the book, they're probably not going to like the book. Desperately fighting the urge not to ask if you've read One Piece. I have not read One Piece. I'm sorry. What's your top 5 bands and artists? Everyone needs an excuse to gush about their favorite music once in a while. Hell yeah. I talked about this a little bit already, but I love Halsey. There's the cinematic aspects of her music. I don't know. Her voice, Halsey just does it for me. Also, Lana Del Rey, another sad indie girl. She's fallen off a little bit. She's washed. Not gonna lie. But gosh, I don't know. Something about both of those speaks to me. I also love Pink Floyd. I know, kind of a not exactly like the first two, but Pink Floyd is something that I love. I'm getting lost in their songs, especially if you listen to any one of their albums all the way through. They're really easy to get sucked into. I mentioned Ethel Cain is somebody I've been listening to a lot, like especially Gibson Girl, Hard Times, Homecoming, Knuckle Velvet, Golden Age. Those are just songs that divorced from the storytelling and the character she's creating. They just, I drive home from work sometimes weighed down by the atmosphere of my own knowledge and the crushing weight of my own existence, and I pretend that I'm Rust Cole from True Detective, and I listen to Ethel Cain, and I watch the cornfields pass by, and I think, hell yeah. I also, I like Harry Styles, as I've mentioned. I love the Scorpions. I think they're great. I don't want to be that guy, but I will listen to any genre, providing that the music in that genre is good. There's a lot of country that I love. One of my favorite songs is The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald as well. I also love The Weeknd. Sometimes if you just want something loud and badass, you're driving home at night, you throw The Weeknd on, all your problems go away. You can bump them at the gym as well. You can bump Lana Del Rey at the gym too. And I like Taylor Swift for her storytelling and her lyrics, and because she's got so many literary references in her works. But yeah, Corey Bananas, you tell me what your favorite bands and artists are. It's your turn to gush now. Okay, this is a long one. Any reason why you ditched an extreme to another extreme? Liberal extremism is quite bad too. I used to be pretty liberal until I saw how unhinged and utterly toxic it all became. These days, I'm fairly more right-wing. Clearly, putting political restraints on your videos is not a good thing, since you are solely in an echo chamber at that point. Why not tackle things from a grayscale? Not everything liberal is good, and not everything conservative is bad. That's just not reality. Neither nuanced. This person is, I would assume, mad about my how books and movies saved me from the alt-right pipeline video or whatever. And I want to answer the question by first addressing several assumptions that this question makes, which is that I am somehow extreme in my political beliefs. I'm not. Particularly because, in the United States, we need to dispel of this notion that there is, an extreme or radical left wing, especially one that's predominantly in power. There's not. An extreme leftist would be somebody who's advocating for a complete dissolution of the state and an absorption of all property and companies by the public in general, and an abolition of private property. None of which are things that I've ever fucking advocated for. Thinking that fucking corporations should provide something and should have less rights than an individual is not an extreme liberal perspective, especially globally. Thinking that everybody should have the same access to voting and to healthcare and to voice an opinion is not fucking liberally extreme, in the least. And furthermore, the suggestion that I exist in an echo chamber is based on several false assumptions. First of all, I live in an extremely conservative area. Most of the adults that I interact with are conservative, and I hear them speak conservatively all of the time. I'm almost exclusively surrounded by conservative people. Online, I get tons of negative comments on my opinion about things. And sometimes also these are people that are mad that I am not more left, or they assume that I am actually a Republican. And also, if you listen to the news or keep up with current events, which I do, the majority of the people speaking about topics tend to be conservative, especially if you're listening to media, which is really focused on public engagement, which I do. My fucking local news is dominated by conservatism. Even my state news, like NPR, has regular people on the show all the time, and most of them are conservative. Like the average man on the street that gets interviewed is conservative. So I'm exposed to the fucking president. All three branches of the government are controlled by conservatives, and I read conservative writings all the time and engage with conservative people face to face in the grass all the time. And I've advocated many times for engaging with conservative content and conservative media and conservative people. I don't have any problem with that at all. I think it's good for you to be aware of both sides of any kind of an ideology. It's really important. And I talk about that in my video about how I went from the alt-right pipeline to, not being a part of the alt-right. And then to this next point about why not tackle things from a grayscale. I mean, I said that my videos are biased because they're my perspective, but with that in mind, I feel like my first approach to most content is to look at it somewhat academically, and to look at something academically, you have to look at it objectively. And this is why, again, I can read a work which I don't personally politically agree with and think that it still delivers its message well. For example, Anthem by Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand is not an author that I really politically agree with on most issues, but I think that Anthem makes a compelling case for the themes that she tries to explore in most of her works, fiction and nonfiction. In fact, Anthem is a more convincing argument for objectivism than Atlas Shrugged is. Maybe it's because objectivism is the least developed in Anthem, but that's a book that I actually teach kids, and it's one that, has politics I don't agree with, and I couldn't do that unless I had examined it from an objective grayscale manner. However, when it comes to closely examining artwork and the themes and messages made by that artwork and its authors, most of our important works are by liberal authors exploring liberal ideals in retaliation against generally restrictive or conservative societal structures. Whereas if you are creating conservative art, which supports whatever the status quo is, which is one of the core elements of conservatism, you are not creating, to me, thought-provoking art. And so even when you look at things in a grayscale manner like that, to me, at some point, you eventually are going to get back to one being different than the other. I'm not going to necessarily say better, because there's no objective manner to qualify that. But if you're really trying to engage with the text, at its most basic or even its deepest functions, you need to eventually recognize the fact that that text in some aspect is likely to be liberal. And when it comes to conservative art, most of it is that. It is conservative ... art ? Because it is about conservatives just trying to reinforce why their understanding of a specific topic is already correct. Take, for example, the Matt Walsh Am I Racist movie. This guy is never really asking genuine questions. He's just engaging with people who I will happily admit are fucking weird and don't really represent my values in their purest form, but nor is Matt Walsh trying to engage with these people genuinely. And partly that's because these people themselves aren't even genuine. And as I mentioned also in my How Books and Movies Saved Me from the Alt-Right, I don't just get my ideas or thoughts from fiction, from films and novels. I read a ton of nonfiction. I have 2 shelves in a room in my house that are full of nonfiction. Everything from political theory to just books about historical battles, to biographies about presidents, to memoirs, to local history, to state history, books about entire countries, societies, whatever. I read nonfiction. And yeah, I mean, obviously extremism in any kind of ideology is unhinged and bad. Like, I totally agree with you. But what I find interesting also in this question is the suggestion that, like, you swung from being liberal to being right-wing because you felt that the left wing was toxic, and yet you criticized me for swinging from the right wing to the left wing. Why is what you did any different? I mean, we both just engaged with information in a new way that changed our mind about a variety of topics, which made us reevaluate our belief systems and readjust from there. I mean, I'm not going to say any one of us is right or wrong. I mean, I think I'm right, obviously, and you think you're right, obviously. But the manner in which we respond to information is what defines us, and I feel like I try to take a close look at information and examine it for bias and propaganda and meaning and purpose and all those things. And I also have to do that because it is my job. Like, those are important skills as a reader. So I don't know if I actually answered your question or not, but I tried to. Yeah. Okay. Also, sorry if I got a little heated there. I just talk really fast and try to get my point across quickly. I'm not mad at you, and I hope that you're not mad at me. Do you have any control over the required reading list for your students? What are your favorites to recommend and receive book reports on? Yeah, actually, at my school, my curriculum is totally made by me, and so I choose everything that the kids read. My favorites to recommend, and I teach Lord of the Flies, as I've talked about, and the kids always write some really good stuff about Lord of the Flies and government and different sociological topics. I love reading Lord of the Flies essays. Those always fascinate me. Ooh, this person has a bunch of questions, and they also have a Clippy profile picture, which is based in Epic. Okay, first question they have. Are kids getting worse at media analysis in school general, as a TikTok's claim? It's kind of hard for me to say because I've only been teaching for 4 years, so I don't have 20 years of experience to refer to. Each grade, so I teach sophomores every year, and, they go back and forth on what they can do. I think that it's not just kids that are getting worse at media analysis. I kind of think that everybody is getting worse at everything because we have a lot of societally encouraged apathy and a disregard for learning and academics, especially among boys. I guess yes, but also no. Every kid is different as well. It's just, this question really depends on my mood. I'm in a good mood today, so I'm going to say no. But if you ask me when I'm crabby or after a long day, I would absolutely say yes. Any lessons you've learned from teaching that you found use of outside the classroom? Yeah, really just knowing how to engage with people and connect to people and make them feel special, I think, and also understanding what makes a town and a community thrive. It is a school. It is the opportunities that you give kids and you give families and you give parents, and it's the reason people move to districts and into towns, and a school really connects businesses and the community together. And I've learned a lot about how state and local government works from teaching. And, maybe that's not exactly what you're asking because it's not about kids, but finding ways to convey complex ideas to people so they can understand it easily also is something that I've learned from working in the classroom and, communicating effectively, I feel. Why the facial hair? What, you don't like it? I mean, mostly because I'm too lazy to shave and I hate shaving. That's the short answer. But my girlfriend likes facial hair, so that's also why I kind of keep it sometimes. Any tips for analyzing a piece of media, like your general series of steps or common pitfalls you see in yourself and students? The main thing is not to respond to work exclusively based on how it makes you feel. In the moment, that's good. How a movie makes you feel is necessary to consider. But also, think about the intention behind it. Why does the creator want you to feel that way? What cause are they trying to support? Or what are they trying to make you think about? That's the first thing that you should do. And then the second thing you should do is see if you can come up with any other pieces of media which explore the same question, and if it comes up with the same answer as what you just watched, because it might not. One example that I like to use, and which I used in my film class last year, was the Baz Luhrmann film Elvis, compared to the Sofia Coppola film Priscilla. Both about the same topic, the Presleys, but one is about Priscilla Presley and one is about Elvis Presley. And these movies ask pretty similar questions about fame and relationships, but they don't come to the same answers. Now, why is that? Why does Baz Luhrmann choose to tell a different story than Sofia Coppola? I don't know. That's something that you've got to explore between the creators and the text themselves and figure out. The most common pitfall I see is people just assuming that what they think or see the first time is it, that there's nothing deeper, that there's no reason to think about anything more complexly, that there's no deeper message. Star Wars is just lasers. King Kong is just a monkey. That's the most common mistake people make. Usually there is something deeper to explore. The curtains are never just blue. What is the biggest book that you have with you right now? I think that it is probably this one, Rising Star by David Garrow, about our 40th president, Obama. I also have Henry Kissinger's autobiography on hand, as everyone always does. That's a pretty big one, too. I don't know if this counts, but I also have this, America, A Celebration, by Martin V. Sandler. A lot of this are photographs, but this is a monster book. This is like a coffee table book, though. Pretty fantastic. A lot of great stuff in here. For novels, I think one of my biggest books I have on hand is Mason and Dixon by Thomas Pynchon. We also got The Executioner's Song by Norman Mailer. And Infinite Jest is also another long novel that I've got on hand. Pen and paper or digital, you choose the scenario. If I have to write something long, like if I have to write an essay or, if I'm writing like fiction for myself, digital. I don't like writing by hand. I have horrible handwriting, and I can type way fast. Like, the speed I can type is closer to the speed I can think than when I'm writing things out. I hate writing longhand because I forget what I'm going to say. Also, like, every year I write every single one of my students a personal letter, and I type them all, and most of those letters are at least 2 full typed pages. There's no way that I could ever possibly write 100 2-page letters minimum by hand. I just couldn't do it. But if I'm like sending somebody a letter in the mail, like, I fill out cards a lot. I try to write my family a lot. I do that by hand. Do you think media nowadays is easier or harder to analyze than stuff from 10 years or hundreds of years ago? Oh, that's a good question. It's tough. I think in a way it's easier. Like, if something comes out in 2025, I can watch and analyze that easier than something which came out in 1925, I think, because it's of the era that I am also from. However, in the meta-modernist period that we are in, media is so much more self-aware and self-referential, and also referencing of other media, that it does get hard to, like, catch everything, which you can never do. Whereas media from, say, 1925 doesn't have probably as many, like, meta-narrative devices that it's building on. If it's building on something, it's likely something classical, like, a Greek play or Shakespeare, the Bible, or whatever. However, that work is also going to be filled with cultural and moral norms from that time period, which is hard to connect to. And I found, like, with kids especially, showing them something from 100 years ago or 50 years ago or even 20 years ago is really hard for them, because they just don't empathize, connect with, relate to whatever it is. They just have a hard time grasping different social scenarios than those they're used to. Not that that's a new problem. Kids, have always done that, but it's shocking to me just how alien kids view something even that was made like in the 80s or the 90s. How long are you planning to make videos? By the way, the ones I've seen, I've really liked. Thank you. I'm glad you liked them. As long as I got something to say. Honestly, sometimes there's space between my videos because I just don't feel like I have anything valuable to say at the time. I only try to make a video when I feel like I have a unique perspective or opinion on something, and, like, I don't like to rehash things a lot of people have already spoken about. So as long as people are watching my videos and I feel like they're good and I'm happy with them, I will make them. But I would stop and find something else to do if YouTube ever got to a point where I just felt it was too difficult or too objectionable to use, if that makes sense. Because, there's always problems with YouTube. What book or movie do you usually get the most engagement from in your classroom? As I mentioned, I think I managed to pull the most engagement out of Lord of the Flies, because there also is a movie and there's a lot to unpack from it. All right, final question. Will you analyze aliens with a $sign? This comment is an inside joke. And the answer, yes, I will. Somewhere. Somehow.
Okay, this is a question that I realized I missed somehow, but it was a good question, so I wanted to come back to it. That's why I'm wearing my glasses. I'm sick, and it looks different. Okay, so this question is there anything you wish you could teach students but can't due to it being a large subject matter, the school system not allowing you, or any other reason? Yeah, there's always stuff I wish I could teach that I can't. Never due to anything nefarious, or anything like that. But mostly stuff that I can't teach is because it's too long, like it would take too much time, or because it has some sort of inappropriate content, like specifically, it's got too much swearing or too much sex, or something like that. There's ways around certain things, like you can permission slips, cut out parts, whatever. But those are the two big ones. Or also, if something has material that I think will be too controversial, I won't use it. Like, despite what some people might think, I'm not going to give kids like a very overtly political piece of work that is dedicated towards making them feel something. I will instead choose, something with themes or ideas that I want them to question and discuss, or I'll pick two works that do have clear ideologies, but you put them against each other so kids are responding to two different things in an objective manner. So that's mostly it.
Okay, that was really long. That was a lot of questions. If I somehow missed one of your questions because it didn't show up under the video or YouTube hit it or something, I'm sorry. I tried to hit all of them, and I hope I gave a satisfactory answer. If there's something I wasn't clear about or you want to know more, feel free to comment on this, and this is a video I'm a little bit more likely to respond to. But thank you to everyone who asked questions. I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you all for 10K subs. I hope you continue to like and support the channel. And more importantly, I hope that you just have a good day. I am indebted to all of you. You're the best. And I hope that you learned something about the book and movie guy that you didn't know before. And I hope that it was interesting. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.